I recently went back and watched the original Mobile Suit Gundam from 1979, and I remember it being the less impressive of the Gundam shows that were on Toonami back in the early days, because it seemed a little dated to me at the time, and it was, but now, 40 plus years later, this show is super ahead of its time. The origin of a ton of tropes, and above all, holy God, was it not for children at all, because everyone that you like dies. It was like Game of Thrones with giant robots. It was way more brutal than I remembered. I'm Dan Umphin, and this is the Doomcast. Look, if you haven't watched it, I feel like I shouldn't have to point out spoilers for a 42-year-old TV show, right? But anyway, you're warned. So the series starts off with a tragedy in the background. Like half of humankind is dead in a war between space-dwelling Zeon and Earth. Zaku's attack Side 7's secret Gundam weapon and a white base, killing hundreds of people quickly. Then Amuro, the series hero, jumps in the Gundam and then blows a hole in the colony, and then his own dad gets sucked out of it. Unbeknownst to him, for like 20 episodes, the viewer thinks that he killed his dad. And that's episode 1. Patricide. But don't worry, he's only severely brain damaged and tragically, horrifically insane. And this is only the beginning of a body count higher than Jamie Madrox's. Amuro's the last line of defense between a ship of civilians and kids and Zeon forces. And if their goal was to make a show largely anti-war through making it as horrific as they possibly could for children, while still making it something that kids would watch, holy cow, guys, mission accomplished. They're pursued to Earth by Garma Zabi, who gets betrayed by Char Aznable and lets the white base and Gundam just murder him in a carrier full of other soldiers. Which is relatively tragic because in this series, at least, Garma's portrayed as a somewhat sympathetic and relatively charismatic, likable kind of figure. But then Garma's fiance, perfectly innocent woman, tracks down the white base and then manages to crash an aircraft in front of Gundam, gets out, points a gun at Amuro, and then faints and falls like 100 feet and straight up breaks her neck. Ooh. Then Amuro and Kai bury this poor girl like, I don't know who she was, she went crazy, pointed a gun at Amuro, and then died. Ramba Ral seems like a pretty decent guy. Kind of a dad, bit of a goof. Whatever. And his partner Haman, both of them befriend Amuro and Frau Bo, only to die after nearly beating Amuro multiple times. Raul launched a boarding parade on White Base, discovers Sayla Mass, a girl that he helped raise as Artesia in Zeon, and then and even says himself that he forgets to fight, takes a bullet, and then dies. Later, Haman tries to avenge him by running a suicide run with just the top half of a tank against the Gundam, and then ends up getting stopped by a very sick Ryu who flies a core fighter in just to save Amuro. And that's the thing about this show, is that at a time when a lot of TV shows, villains were transparently evil and not really three-dimensional, even the villains get portrayed with sympathy and humanity, even if you can't agree with their ideals and they're responsible for horrific atrocities. They're still human. Like Miss Matilda, a character that everybody likes, with Earth Forces, a young officer on whom Amuro, and frankly every other guy, has some kind of crush. Flies for the supply corps, just gets tragically killed when her supply plane hits a Black TriStar Dom. Kai. Kai is a dick. Nobody likes him. He's on a white base, but then leaves, meets a hot Irish girl in Belfast, taking care of her 2 siblings in a rickety old house. Her name is Miharu. Good Irish name, Miharu. Anyway, she's spying for Zeon and convinces him to go back to the white base so she can secretly stow away, unbeknownst to him. And then she leaves her 2 siblings under 10 to just fend for themselves. 2 episodes later, she goes out on the wing of a gun carrier that Kai is flying to fix a weapon when the plane is hit, and then she falls into the Atlantic Ocean and frickin' dies. Oh, Woody, Matilda's fiance that they meet back at Jaburo base, dead. Just drives into a blockade of Zeon when they attack the base. Most of the people at Jaburo also dead. And it's at this point when you start to realize, oh, every single time they introduce a new character, they're going to kill that person. So by the time they introduce Slugger Law, you're like, oh, I bet that guy's gonna die. And sure enough, several episodes later, he gives Mirai a ring that he got from his grandmother, even though he was a frickin' dick to her and slapped her, and then just goes out and promptly dies against Big Zam. Heroically, but still. Dozel, the general of Solomon in Zeon, sends his wife and kid into a shuttle for safety. He's this big, ugly brute who's, like, got his face all scarred up, but he gets stabbed and explodes in Big Zam after killing a shit ton of Federation forces. It's crazy. Crazy! It's a TV series where some of the characters are womanizing abusers and like outright Nazis, and they're making me give a crap when they get just horribly killed. Chalia Bull, a new type from Zeon, who seems like a decent dude, gets, I don't know, hyped up mobile armor, eats shit, dies horribly also. Degwin Zabi, absolute monster. General Rebel, decent guy, not in the show that much, gets vaporized in one shot by Giran, which, alright, about Giran. Here's the thing. Previously, I had only watched this show on Toonami, in its original run on US TV. And so I never got to watch the whole show. So in a prior video, I pointed out that while they looked like Nazis, they weren't actually exactly Nazis. They're fascists, absolutely. Bad people, yes. But not interested in genocide despite committing atrocities and acts of mass murder. It was just war. Well, I hadn't seen the part where Giran straight up says, I am a Nazi and a follower of Hitler, and I also want to kill most Earth humans and rule them because I'm of a superior race. So yeah. Also, Zeon is literally Nazi backward phonetically. Anyway, Giran does get shot in the back of his head by his sister, who's pissed that he murdered his father, and she just lets his corpse float around the control room of a Baoku. And then, of course, there's Lala, who's really a victim all the way around. Amuro kills her, albeit kind of accidentally, but he psychically feels her death. Char pushed her into that war, and perhaps she deceived herself a little about Char's own intentions. But certainly she's one of the more tragic stories in the entire series. Definitely pivotal to everything else that happens in Universal Century. If that's not enough, the end of the series was supposed to have Amuro dying in an explosion in a Baoku. But instead, the whole series about giant robots ends in a rapier fight where Amuro gets a sword broken off in his shoulder. I mean, shit! But then they decided against killing him because that would be too much for kids. Really? After 43 episodes, this was too much? Heaven forbid you kill a 15th core character in the series about the brutality of warfare. It's fine. Even so, it's a lot better and a lot more engaging than I remember, even if a little bit dated. But I still chewed through it. More than cool robots or slightly sloppy space battle animation for our current age, it's an historical document of human beings a generation removed from the Second World War, from a culture arguably irrevocably devastated by that conflict, coming to terms with what that actually meant. But just the same, it's grimmer and also more gripping than I remember, and that alone makes it worth a rewatch. Thanks everybody for watching. This has been the Doomcast. I'll see you next week.